They told me I didn't need to come. Twice. First, in a group email from my mom, and then in a text from my dad that read, "It's Sierra's day. Let her have it." No period, no warmth. Just like always. I went anyway. I didn't fly halfway around the world to be polite. I sat in the back row. Alone. No name tag, no saved seat. Nobody waved when they saw me. Some didn't see me at all. Sierra Monroe. Full honors. Class of 2025. I hadn't seen her since she was 16. Now she was 22, valedictorian, and glowing like she had invented graduation. The program had her name printed 4 times. Mine didn't appear once, not even in the family section. They listed our parents, Thomas and Evelyn Monroe. Then, a blank line. Like I never existed. My mother wore a tailored navy pantsuit and 3 strands of pearls, looking like she was running for Senate. My father had on a Rolex he couldn't afford 5 years ago and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. When Sierra walked onto the stage, they stood like the Pope had arrived. They weren't alone. The whole auditorium buzzed. Her friends cheered, and her professors smiled. You could feel it, the girl had won. She had shown up, played by the rules, and now she was cashing in. I didn't clap. Not because I wasn't proud, but because pride wasn't on the menu today. Today was all about image. The applause was just part of the theater. Sierra started her speech by thanking those who believed in her when others didn't. Classic move. Then, she smiled directly at our parents. To my mom and dad, who sacrificed so much for me, especially when others chose other paths. My mother wiped a fake tear. My dad squeezed her hand. Then Sierra dropped the line. Not everyone finds their place right away. Some join the military. Some get stuck there. It wasn't subtle. A few audience members chuckled. Most didn't know who she meant. My parents did. I didn't blink. I just adjusted my collar. She continued with her speech, tossing out polished lines about hope and hard work and breaking glass ceilings. It sounded sincere. I might have believed it if I hadn't known her since she was 5. The second the applause started, my dad leaned toward my mom and whispered something. She laughed. Not a loud one. Just that soft, closed-mouth kind that says, "We raised the right child." I looked down at my boots. Polished, standard issue. I'd worn the same kind in Kandahar. "Excuse me," a man said as he stepped over my legs. "Are you with the Monroe family?" I said nothing. He gave a stiff smile and moved along. Probably someone from church or the board. The Monroe family had always been more impressive without me. Then came the wind. It started as a whisper, just enough to ruffle the program in my lap. Then louder. Chairs rattled. People started turning their heads. The air shifted, like something was coming down. I looked up. A shadow crossed the quad. Rotor blades cut the air like a buzzsaw. Black paint, no markings. A UH-60M Blackhawk, hovering low, then slowly descending. Everyone froze. Some held their phones up, others ducked instinctively. Still on stage, Sierra squinted into the wind, hair flying wildly. The helicopter touched down on the far end of the lawn. No announcement. No warning. The side door opened. A woman in uniform stepped out. Full bird colonel. Sunglasses. Serious stride. She walked past the dean, past the faculty, straight toward me. "Commander Monroe," she said. "You're needed. Now." Mouths dropped. Phones clicked. My sister stood there, clutching her bouquet. My father didn't move. My mother looked like someone had poured cold water on her perfect pearls. Sometimes, justice doesn't wait for a courtroom. Leave a comment if you know exactly how that moment felt. And hit subscribe, this story isn't slowing down. I stood up. Adjusted my collar again. My boots hit the lawn like they belonged there. I didn't bother looking at my family as I walked past them. If they wanted a show, they got one. The colonel didn't stop for small talk. We crossed the lawn, boots sinking slightly into the trimmed grass, cutting through 100 stunned stares. She handed me a headset the second we stepped into the rotor wash. "Secure line," she said, like I knew the drill. Which I did. We lifted off before the dean could form a sentence. I saw Sierra still holding her flowers, eyes locked on the chopper like she'd seen a ghost. Maybe she had. Inside, the colonel tapped her mic. You weren't scheduled for extraction. I didn't ask to be. Orders changed. Command wants a word. Let me guess. Something to do with a company I don't own, money I didn't move, and signatures I never gave? She nodded once. Your name's showing up in some places it shouldn't. Story of my life. We landed 30 minutes later at Fort Myer. The base hadn't changed. The same painted lines on the tarmac. The same guard at the south gate nodded as I'd just returned from a long coffee run instead of Afghanistan. Inside the admin building, I met Claire Whitman. Civilian contractor. Legal. Sharp eyes, cheap shoes. She had 2 folders in hand and a face that said she'd already decided about me. Commander Monroe, she said, extending a hand. We have some concerns about your financial disclosures. So does my credit score. She didn't smile. Figures. We sat in a small room with gray walls and a water cooler that made more noise than the AC. She opened the first folder. Bank documents, contract forms, and email printouts. One of them had my signature. My real signature. Except I'd never signed it. This LLC, she pointed, was opened in your name. Nexus Meridian Group. 6 months ago. Filed out of Virginia. It's tied to a federal subcontract related to tech procurement. I've never heard of it. Then you should know it's received 3 payments from a Pentagon account, totaling $2.7 million. I leaned back. Let that number sit. And this is my problem because your name, your service ID, and your military email were used to verify it. Neat trick. Did you grant anyone power of attorney while deployed? Yes. My father. Emergency authorization. 4 years ago, it expired 2 years back. Except he renewed it. Electronically. Without my consent? The system processed it as valid. My jaw locked. I hadn't even known he could do that. Claire slid a document across the table. This is the renewal form. Your signature is on it. I looked. It was mine. My slant, my spacing, everything. Forgery? If it is, it's damn good. I flipped to the metadata summary stapled behind it. The document had been created on a home computer. The IP address was familiar, my childhood home. The one with the blue shutters and the fake brick mailbox, the one Sierra still lived in while finishing school. So someone used my name, forged my signature, and reactivated a legal document giving my father access to military-backed financial accounts. Yes. And he used that access to authorize contracts through Nexus Meridian. Who runs Nexus? Claire tapped the second folder. We don't know yet. The listed phone number goes to a burner. Address is a shared office space. But the tax filings show another authorized user, Sierra Monroe. I didn't react. Not outwardly. That took effort. You think she's behind it? We don't speculate, we verify. But someone in your family knows how this happened, and someone wants your name to take the fall. Of course they do. I'm the disappointment. The one who ran off to war instead of law school. Claire finally looked up from her papers. We need to know how far this goes. Are you in? You think I came back for the graduation? Didn't you? Not really. I came back to remind them I still exist. Now I've got a better reason. She closed the folders. Good, because this thing smells like fraud, and it's wearing your last name. Outside, I stood under a faded flag and let the wind punch through my uniform. The kind of wind you feel in your ribs. Sierra called me worthless in front of 1,000 people. But the truth? She had no idea how valuable my name was. The problem was someone else did. And they were spending it like they owned it. I didn't leave the base right away. I needed to breathe before I started burning bridges in both directions. I stopped by the chapel. Empty pews, faint smell of polish and old wood. No candles, just the echo of boots and memories. I sat in the third row and let my hands hang loose between my knees. The silence let me think. Not feel think. Claire was sharp. Sharp enough to know this wasn't random. Whoever set this up didn't just steal my name. They weaponized it. And now the colonel had orders. Orders with my name on them meant the army either suspected me or needed me to play along long enough to trap the real players. Either way, I was already inside the blast radius. I left Fort Myer with a file copy in my bag and a name in my mouth I hadn't said in years, Sierra, not like a sister's name, more like a suspect's. I drove back to town in a borrowed car with base plates, parked 2 blocks from the university, and walked the rest. I still had the graduation pass in my pocket. The ceremony had ended over an hour ago. Most people were gone. A few balloons drifted along the sidewalk. A banner flapped half-torn from the fencing. Perfect scene for reflection if you were into that kind of thing. I wasn't. I found my father behind the auditorium, smoking a cigar like he just won a court case. He didn't see me right away, just stared out at the field, blowing smoke at the horizon. "Did you like the speech?" He turned. Smiled the way men do when they're stalling. "Didn't think you'd show. You told me not to. Twice. It wasn't personal. Neither was the fraud, I guess." His eyes sharpened. "What fraud?" "Don't play dumb. I'm the wrong Monroe for that." He blew smoke again. A long one. "You got questions, you go through the proper channels." I signed what I was told to sign. "By who?" "Your sister. She had the forms. Said you asked for the renewal yourself. And you didn't think to check?" "She said you were busy. Overseas." I believed her. "No, you wanted to believe her. That's different. You weren't around." "I wasn't dead either." He didn't reply. Just looked back out at the lawn. "She said it was just paperwork," he added. "Nothing shady. She said you were building something together." "You believed that? Me and her, in business together?" "It sounded like maybe you two patched things up." I laughed. First time in hours. It didn't feel good. She never visited me once while I was deployed. Didn't even send a card. But sure, we were business partners. He shifted, uncomfortable now. She brought the papers in a folder. Everything typed, highlighted. Legal letterhead. "Forgery comes in color now, Dad." He went quiet again. "Not guilty. Just small. You knew something didn't feel right. You signed anyway. You let her wrap it around my name. I thought I was helping you." "No, you thought you were helping her. Like always." He dropped the cigar. Stepped on it. "What are you going to do? Press charges? On your own sister? If I don't, she burns my record, my name, and possibly my clearance. So yeah, I might. She's your family. Number. She's your daughter. I'm just the one who made it inconvenient to keep pretending she was perfect." I turned and walked. I didn't go far. She was on the side lawn, talking to a couple of alums. She had perfect hair, fresh lipstick, and a new phone. They are probably already filtering the photos. I watched for a second. Not long, just enough. She caught my eye and walked over like it was coffee time. "You made quite the exit." "That wasn't an exit. That was an invitation." "To what? Your next deployment?" "To the truth." She laughed. "You always were dramatic. And you were always dangerous when underestimated." "What do you want, Alex? A medal? A headline? People to know you're not as pathetic as you look in a uniform?" "I want to know why you used my name." "What name?" "Nexus Meridian. Pentagon Payments. Power of attorney. Pick one." She looked past me like I wasn't real. "You're reaching. You forged federal documents." "Prove it." "I intend to." She stepped forward. "You want to drag this family through the mud just because you were never good enough to be the star." "No," I said. "I want to make sure the star doesn't set the whole house on fire." We stood there. 2 sisters. One spotless, one scarred. Only one of us had anything left to lose. I walked away. Not because I was done, but because I had everything I needed. And the Pentagon wasn't going to wait around forever. I didn't call Claire right away. First, I stopped at a gas station to rinse the taste of that conversation out of my mouth. The clerk barely looked up. I bought bottled water and a pack of gum, then sat in my car with the engine off, letting the cold air from the vents run until it stopped comforting. I decided I wouldn't play defense somewhere between the first sip and the second chew. I dialed Claire. "Monroe," she answered. "You're back on the grid. How fast can you run another ID sweep?" "Depends what you want. Everything with my signature, my name, my social tied to federal money. I want a full trail." "You're looking for a needle in a flaming haystack." "Yeah. So bring Gasoline." She didn't laugh, but I heard the pause. She respected the shift. "Give me 6 hours. I'll have something by midnight. Text me if you get early hits." "And Monroe?" "Yeah? Be ready for what you find. It might be personal. It already is." I drove back to Arlington. The sun was down when I pulled into a parking lot across from a storage facility. It's one of those boxy places with too many cameras and too few working light bulbs. I had a unit there. I kept some old deployment gear, paper files, and stuff I never brought home. I dug through the bin labeled "Discard." Taped shut since 2022. Inside, old orders, a few medals I never hung, and a manila folder marked POA. Power of attorney. I scanned the signatures. Mine is clean and tight. My father's rushed. The expiration date is June 2023. The digital renewal Claire showed me, filed in September, which meant it was forged. I cross-referenced the notary ID. Expired. No longer active. Couldn't have legally certified the doc. That gave me leverage. I took photos of everything and emailed them to Claire from a burner account. Then I locked up and drove to where I didn't want to go. My parents' house. The porch light was on. The lawn was overwatered like always. 2 ceramic eagles still flanked the steps, patriotic but hollow. I didn't knock. I walked in. My mother was in the kitchen, drying a wine glass she hadn't washed. She turned but didn't smile. "You could have called. You could have raised 2 daughters." She set the glass down like I'd insulted the stemware. "This family has had enough drama. You think I caused this? You showed up with a helicopter. I showed up with orders. The helicopter just made people notice." She walked to the sink and stared into it like she would find better answers in the drain. "We only did what we thought was best for Sierra. And what about what was best for me? You never needed help. That's the lie you sold yourself so you wouldn't feel guilty." She didn't flinch. She didn't do much of anything. I opened the folder and laid it on the counter. "You recognize this?" She glanced down, then away. "That's a forgery. Illegal. Talk to your father." I did. He blamed Sierra. Sierra blames nobody. And you, what's your role in all this? I trusted them. No, you ignored me. There's a difference. I gathered the papers and slid them back into the folder. She still hadn't looked me in the eye. "I have a hearing coming. If this escalates, it becomes federal. And if it does, they're not going to care about family ties. They're going to want names. Don't do this." "Then tell me the truth." Sierra said it was temporary. She said you were on board. That you approved it before leaving base. She lied. I didn't know that. You didn't ask. She exhaled through her nose. Wiped her hands on a towel that didn't need drying. She needed help. She said it was urgent. I believed her. And now? Now I don't know what to believe. Start with this. I never asked for anything. I served. I disappeared so you wouldn't have to explain me. And she took that silence as permission. I didn't wait for her response. I left the folder on the counter and walked out the same way I came in. My phone buzzed as I reached the sidewalk. Claire. I picked up. I found something. You're gonna want to sit down. I'm already standing. That company? Nexus Meridian? It's not just taking contracts, it's laundering disbursements. Your name's connected to over 12 payments, totaling $3.4 million. And Sierra? Still listed as the secondary signatory on 3 of them. But get this, one of the filings used a different name. Alias? Possibly. But the email domain linked back to your dad's old real estate license. He never had a company. Not officially. But someone used his ID to mask ownership. So who actually opened it? That's the part I'm still chasing. But someone covered their tracks like a pro. I didn't reply, just stared at the dark street in front of me. Someone had turned me into a scapegoat somewhere beyond those houses, beyond that perfect suburban quiet. And they did it using everything I left behind. I crossed the street without thinking as the sidewalk owed me answers. Claire's voice still echoed in my ear. My name, Idaho, and career are all tied to a trail of forged forms and federal money. $3.4 million funneled through a fake LLC, and someone dared to sign it Commander A. Monroe. I didn't even have that rank back when this started. I walked for blocks. Past cookie-cutter homes with trimmed hedges and security signs, past front porches with flagpoles and seasonal wreaths. All of it is fake comfort. I didn't stop until I saw something tangible, an old diner. Neon flickering, parking lot cracked. That would do. Inside, the waitress didn't ask questions. She brought me black coffee and left the pot. I pulled out a notepad and started listing everything I knew. Nexus Meridian filed for a federal vendor ID 6 months ago. 2. My social and service email were tied to that registration. 3. My father renewed the power of attorney using a forged signature. 4. Sierra was listed as a secondary signer on 3 payouts. 5. One filing traced to my father's old real estate license. In that mess, I stopped being a daughter and became a liability. I scribbled 2 more names. One I didn't want to write, Evelyn Monroe. It wasn't just the signature. It was the silence. My mother had known something and said nothing. And when faced with the evidence, she didn't defend Mesh flinched. That's not guilt, that's fear. My phone buzzed. Claire. Got a hit. Nexus filed 4 subcontracting invoices to a company called Halden Systems. You know it? Number. They're real. Legit operation out of Texas. They subcontracted based on a signed DoD release form also under your name. Where'd the money go? Halden wired it to Nexus. Nexus distributed it to 3 accounts. One in Sierra's name, one masked under an LLC called Atlas Advisory Group, and the third to a joint account listed to. She paused. Say it. Thomas and Evelyn Monroe. I closed the notepad. So my parents were paid? 1 deposit. $52,000. Memo line said, administrative consulting. They don't even know how to open a spreadsheet. Doesn't matter. The money cleared. It's traceable. Send me the routing history. Already in your inbox. I hung up and stared at my reflection in the window. They stopped including just a uniform and a face in Christmas cards. They used me because I was safe. Reliable. Gone. Being in uniform meant limited access. Deployments. No chance to double-check home affairs. But it also meant credibility. Nobody questions a soldier with a clean record. That made me the perfect cover. The coffee went cold. I left cash on the table and drove to a hotel across from the federal building. I needed a printer and a locked door, not because I needed sleep. In the room, I opened Claire's email. She wasn't exaggerating. Routing logs, PDFs of signed vendor forms, and IP logs with timestamps. Every signature matched mine. Not a single one was mine. And the metadata? Cleaned. Whoever did this knew how to scrub tracks. But not perfectly. One of the uploads came from an ISP in Reston, Virginia. What is the subscriber's name? Monroe Realty LLC. A dead company. It has been inactive since 2018. I searched the address on file. Strip mall. Shared suites. But one of them still had a mailbox. I copied the unit number. Next, I traced Atlas Advisory Group. It had been opened 2 years ago in Delaware Surprise, and used a nominee director. But the filings listed a contact email. The domain matched the same burner Sierra used on her graduation invitations. She hadn't just hijacked my identity, she'd monetized it. And Mom and Dad? They weren't passive, they'd received funds. And if they got money, they had a motive to stay quiet. I printed everything. Labeled it by chain. Government, Nexus, Halden, Atlas. 4 sets. One for me. One for Claire. One for the JAG office. One I'd decide later. The folder sat like a loaded weapon on the desk. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I didn't know what to do, because I did. My family had robbed me while smiling in photos. They took my name, turned it into currency, and dressed it like success. And the most insulting part? They didn't think I'd ever notice. That's the problem with people who think you're disposable. They forget you know how to fight. I packed the folder, locked the hotel door behind me, and headed out. Not to confront anyone. Not yet. This wasn't about fury anymore. It was about facts. And facts, unlike families, don't lie. I handed the folder to the JAG officer like I was sliding over a loaded gun. He didn't ask questions right away, just flipped pages. Bank records, emails, and a digital trail were so neat they looked manufactured because it was. "This is your signature?" he asked, tapping one of the scanned documents. "No," I said. But it was made to look like it. We were sitting in a small office on the lower level of Fort Myers. The lights overhead buzzed faintly. Nothing dramatic, nothing cinematic. Just the kind of room where people like me drop bombs without needing explosions. The officer, Major Lewis, paused when he got to a page with my father's name. "Thomas Monroe authorized a financial proxy on your behalf?" "While I was in Afghanistan," I said. "No contact, no consent, no context." "And the beneficiary account?" I nodded. "Sierra Monroe." He stopped flipping. "You're saying your sister and father opened federal defense accounts in your name while you were deployed?" "Number." "I'm saying they had help, and I wanted official." We sat in silence for a second. Not the awkward kind, the kind where everyone realizes there's no way to unknow what's just been said. Major Lewis finally said, "All right. I'll escalate this." I left the office and walked straight into the air. That sharp, no-nonsense military afternoon, where everything smells like heat, grit, and someone else's chain of command. I didn't call Claire until I was halfway to my car. She picked up on the first ring. "Tell me you're not holding back." I wasn't. We met in her office near Foggy Bottoms Mall, sharp, with no time for pleasantries. I slid the second copy of the same folder across her desk. She didn't speak until she was done reading. "You're sure the fax came from the Monroe house?" "Verified by ISP logs. Same router they've had since 2016. Claire leaned back, kicked off her heels under the desk, and stared at the ceiling. "Jesus. Yeah. You ever think about what happens if this goes public?" I thought about what happens if it doesn't. She gave me a look. Not pity. Not admiration. Just the kind of look people give when they know the storm's already in motion. "Let me dig deeper," she said. "If this was coordinated from inside the household, we'll find their trail." It didn't take long. 2 days later, she called me back with a tone that said she hadn't slept. "You're going to want to see this." I met her at a federal record building in Crystal City. Claire pulled up a terminal with metadata from the original PDF document used to authorize the proxy account. "See that?" she said, pointing at the author tag. "Created by Sierram, 02. She clicked open the file's history. Logged edits from a device named SM Book Pro. Same IP. Same Wi-Fi. The exact physical location was pinged 6 times between the 4th of April and May 2, the Monroe family home. "She forged the file," Claire said. "Start to finish. Your dad might have signed something physical. But the digital version? She built it." I stood there, arms crossed, jaw locked. I didn't say her name, didn't need to. "She's 22, Claire said. "But she's not dumb." "No," I said. "She's calculating." We traced more. A second set of accounts under a shell company registered to an address in Fairfax, barely 15 miles away. Nexus Meridian Group. A paper trail of defense consulting payments linked to that name, routed through 3 dummy LLCs. Total amount processed, $1.28 million. Claire looked at me. "Your sister's not just trying to be you. She's laundering money under your name. She's been building a life off mine. And hiding behind your uniform." I didn't blink. I asked for printouts. The JAG office processed our internal report within 24 hours. But I didn't wait. I printed the data, stacked it clean, and put it in a leather folder I hadn't used since my last promotion board. Then I drove. The house looked the same. Arlington quiet. Painted shutters, trimmed hedges. The kind of family home that says, we don't talk about problems, we just redecorate them. I rang the bell. Sierra answered. She froze when she saw the folder in my hand. Got a minute? I asked. She stepped aside, like she didn't mean to. We sat in the den. Mom's picture-perfect living room. White carpet, untouched bookshelves, a piano nobody plays. I opened the folder and laid down a printed copy of the metadata. She stared at it. What is this? You tell me. I don't know what you're talking about. I flipped to the page, showing the IP logs and the Wi-Fi MAC address. Her eyes darted. Just once. Enough. You want to try again? She looked up, and for a second, I thought she might cry. But no. She tilted her head. You're blowing this out of proportion. No, I said, you're just not used to consequences showing up with proof. She laughed. A dry, humorless puff of air. You really came all this way to play FBI? Number I came to remind you whose name you buried, to build your perfect resume. She didn't respond. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the armrest. Her knuckles turned white. I left the folder on the coffee table. Stood up. Adjusted my collar. I suggest you read it carefully. Then I walked out. No threats, no screaming. Just the sound of her voice behind me, low, but not low enough. She was never supposed to find it. I didn't stop walking. Some things don't deserve a response. I didn't go back to the car I walked until her voice stopped echoing in my head. Sidewalk after sidewalk. Each street is cleaner than the last. Everything is manicured, trimmed, and painted over. This whole neighborhood was designed to make people forget things. I passed a church, then a school. Kids were yelling at recess, unaware that one street over, their PTA mom had just been exposed as a federal felon in heels. Eventually, I stopped at a bus bench and sat down. No bus in sight. Didn't matter. I needed solid concrete under me, which wasn't built on lies. Claire called. Monroe, I answered. You're not gonna like this. Perfect, let's have it. Documents came back from DoD archives. That original power of attorney? The one your dad claimed he just signed on Sierra's request? Yeah? It was notarized by Evelyn Monroe. I let the silence hang. She wasn't legally allowed to notarize anything tied to a family member, Claire added. It's a conflict of interest under federal cert rules. She used her notary license on my file. Yup. Expired a year ago. She doctored the renewal on paper and filed under a new state number that doesn't even exist. Oh, so she forged her own license. To notarize a forged document, giving power over my identity to my sister, who used it to open accounts and funnel defense money. Layer cake of fraud, Claire said. Your mom's not just complicit, she's in it. I looked up at the sky. Gray, cloudless, still. My hand stayed loose. Controlled. Military. I'm forwarding it all to Agent Nolan. You good with that? Send it. Every line. I hung up. Took a breath that didn't help. Then stood and walked. At some point, I stopped asking why. There was no way. There was only one who did what and who helped cover it up. They hadn't used me because I was careless. Or forgiving. Or naive. They used me because I was gone. I was deployed. Off the grid. Unavailable for questions. Predictable in absence. They took everything I stood for and used it as cover. Then turned around and called me unstable, distant, too intense. Classic move. Use the soldier, then blame the combat damage. I found a note tucked under the windshield wiper when I returned to the car. It wasn't handwritten. Just a typed message. No header. No signature. Walk away or we both lose everything. I scanned the lot. No one was nearby. No cameras. Just another clean suburban lot pretending to be safe. I pocketed the note and drove. Not to Claire. Not to Jag. To the one place they'd never expect me to walk into again. My father's office. Monroe Property Group, Suite 208. A dying corner of a dying building. Faux leather chairs, dusty blinds, a fake plant that had outlived half their deals. He was on the phone when I walked in. Stood up too fast when he saw me. "Give me a minute," he mumbled to whoever was on the call. I didn't sit. He hung up and started with, "Alex, I think there's been a misunder. You forged my career." He opened his mouth. Closed it. "You faked a signature. Let Sierra launder money in my name. Accepted payment. Then pretended you were helping. I didn't know. You did. You just didn't care until it caught up. I thought it was legitimate. She said you were involved. Said it was your idea." "Really? Since when do I share financial plans with a 22-year-old sociology major?" He looked down. "She came to us desperate, said you were in trouble, that she needed a legal workaround to keep your pay from being frozen during deployment. She brought paperwork, said a lawyer prepared it. We thought." "You thought what? That the military sends budget updates through Gmail?" He didn't answer. "You knew she was lying. You signed because it was easy. Because you liked how the money felt." He looked me in the eye then. "We didn't think you'd come back." The air left the room. My mouth went dry. "What?" "I don't mean die, I mean, not like this. You were always gone, always somewhere else, even when you were home. It was easier to let Sierra handle things. You're saying you betrayed me because I wasn't warm enough? I'm saying we didn't know how to be proud of you." That landed harder than I wanted it to. But I didn't flinch, I just stepped closer. "You don't get to be proud of a daughter you sold off by signature. I made a mistake. Number, you made a choice." I dropped a copy of the notarized forgery on his desk. "You might want a lawyer. Or two." Then I walked out. Didn't slam the door. Didn't say goodbye. On my way to the car, I got a text. From Sierra. "You're making it worse. Stop now. This isn't just about money anymore." I didn't reply. I just saved the message. She was right. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about identity. And I was done letting other people write mine. I drove straight to the federal building, still holding the note like it might bite through my hand. Claire met me downstairs. Her hair was pulled back tighter than usual. She clocked the note the second I handed it to her. Typed. No fingerprints, no watermark, no signature. "Cowards Inc., I said. "Whoever sent this knows the walls are closing in." We took the elevator to the 5th floor. Agent Nolan was waiting. "You both need to see something," she said. We followed her into a side conference room, blinds already drawn, fluorescent lights too bright. Nolan clicked a remote. A projection lit the wall. Last week, a sealed financial report was sent from a Nexus Meridian account to an external address. Our team intercepted it. It's not just a balance sheet, it's a ledger. Internal documentation. The spreadsheet filled the screen. Line after line of payment entries, account routing numbers, coded descriptions. "What am I looking at?" I asked. "Proof," Nolan said. "A full list of false billing to the Department of Defense. Most under your name." Claire leaned forward. "This column internal approval codes. Look at who signed off." My eyes locked on it. A. Monroe. S. Monroe. T. Monroe. 3 names. 3 levels of involvement. My whole damn family. Nolan zoomed into the metadata. This file was generated from a device registered to Evelyn Monroe. Same IP log to the notarized power of attorney. Same router, same MAC address. Claire spoke quietly. They weren't just in on it, they tracked it, they reported to each other. I stared at the screen. Page after page of federal crimes, all documented by the people who raised me. Organized. Intentional. Rehearsed. "How long have they been doing this?" I asked. Nolan didn't answer with words. She clicked again. A timeline appeared. The earliest transaction dates back 3 years. They started before I even made commander. Claire whispered. They planned the whole thing. Years out. Nolan turned to me. This evidence pushes this from internal fraud to full-scale conspiracy. Federal-level prosecution. Multiple agencies are preparing charges. "What do you need from me?" I asked. Testimony. In person. Signed affidavit. You'll be our primary witness. I nodded. Claire glanced at me. You okay? No, I said. But I'm ready. We spent the next hour scanning documents, confirming entries, and drafting statements. Every signature I didn't write, every transaction I never approved, every lie they crafted in my absence. By the time we stepped out of the building, it was past 7 p.m. The city buzzed with after-work exhaustion, people sipping lattes and pretending nothing under their feet was on fire. I sat on the curb, elbows on my knees. Claire joined me. You know what happens next, right? Yeah. They'll arrest them. There'll be hearings, press. You'll be pulled in 10 directions. I can handle it. Your name will be all over it. Good, let it be mine again. Claire nodded, then handed me a copy of the ledger, now printed and bound. For your records. I took it, heavy in my hands. A family history was rewritten in wire transfers. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Then, another buzz this time, a text. From Sierra. You don't understand what you're doing. You'll destroy everything we built. I replied. Then maybe it deserves to be destroyed. No answer. Claire looked at me. You sure you want to be the one holding the match? I was always holding it. I just stopped pretending it was a candle. We stood. Across the street, an office television played muted breaking news. Something about indictments. A swirl of names, red banners, the first whispers of consequence. I watched it for a moment, then turned away. The evidence had been submitted. It was only a matter of when the noise reached their front door. And I wanted to be close enough to hear the knock. I parked 2 blocks away from the house, not because I had to, but because I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of hearing me pull up. When I reached the front steps, the porch light flicked on. It had one of those motion sensors that always seem to react faster for strangers than for family. The door opened before I knocked. Sierra stood there, barefoot, arms crossed. Her face looked calm, but her eyes didn't match. I figured you'd show up, she said. Then you're smarter than you've been acting. She stepped aside. I walked in without waiting. The house smelled like lemon cleaner, and I panicked. Something forced and scrubbed too late. Mom was in the kitchen, hands around a mug she wasn't drinking from. Dad wasn't in sight. You've made this a lot worse than it had to be, Sierra said behind me. You made this criminal. I'm just pointing out the math. She didn't deny it. Just walked past me and sat on the couch like we were having a family meeting. Mom still hadn't looked up. I set the bound ledger on the coffee table between us. This is what's coming. Redacted version went to the DOD and the DOJ. The full one's with the Inspector General. There's no backpedaling now. Mom finally spoke. You didn't have to involve them. We could have fixed it. Quietly. You mean bury it under another lie? It wasn't supposed to go this far, Sierra said. Yeah, I got that part. What was it supposed to be, then? A little borrowing while the soldier was off the grid? It was for the family, she said flatly. I stared at her. The family? Yes, she said, a little louder. We were trying to stabilize things. Dad's business was collapsing. Mom lost half her savings. I was trying to help. By laundering money under my name? By using what was available. You were gone. You didn't need the credit line. We just rerouted it. You make fraud sound like a bookkeeping adjustment. She stood up. Her voice got sharp. You don't get to walk in here and act like you've been the victim forever. You left. You cut us off. Don't rewrite history just because it makes a cleaner case. I didn't cut anyone off. You just stopped calling. That's rich. Mom finally looked up. Girls. Don't, I snapped. You don't get to girls this one. The room went quiet. Sierra exhaled slowly. You always wanted it to be about you. The military, the deployments, the medals. You think you're the only one who struggled? No, I said. But I'm the only one who didn't cash in someone else's name to cope with it. Sierra turned away. I was trying to protect what was left. You weren't protecting anything. You were preserving a lie. A family image that never existed. She faced me again. You think I don't carry guilt? Guilt isn't a currency, Sierra. It doesn't pay back what you stole. We stood in silence for a few seconds. Then she said, quieter, it was easier when you were gone. I know, I said. That's why you did it. Mom stood up now, holding the mug like it might serve a purpose. We're still your family, Alex. This house is still your home. No, I said. It's just the scene of the crime. You don't mean that. You don't get to tell me what I mean. Not anymore. Sierra dropped onto the couch again. What do you want from us? An apology? Public shame? I want nothing. That's what makes this easy. Then why are you here? Because I needed to see your faces when it all came down. Not out of revenge, out of closure. Sierra looked away. Mom blinked hard like that line physically stung. I turned toward the door. Reached for the handle. You really won't stop this? Mom asked. I didn't answer. Just opened the door. Behind me, I heard Sierra say, we were trying to survive. I stepped outside. We all were, I said. The porch light shut off behind me. Not because I moved, because they had. And that was all I needed to see. I didn't look back at the house. I already knew what it looked like when people realized the story wasn't theirs to control anymore. The next morning, I filed the paperwork. Claire and I sat in a quiet, windowless room 2 floors below the clerk's office. She passed me the final draft of the civil complaint, 47 pages of statements, exhibits, bank records, forged authorizations, and 1 signed declaration with my name on it. I read every word slowly, as if it would vanish if I didn't lock it into memory. At the bottom of the last page, just above the line, my name was printed in clean, bold font. Alexandra E. Monroe. For the first time in months, it looked right. I signed it. Claire collected the pages, slid them into a sealed packet, and stood up. That's it, she said. You just sued your entire family. No, I said. I named them. We handed the envelope to the court clerk. The room was silent except for the mechanical hum of the timestamp machine. Oficial, filed, irreversible. Outside, the air felt different, as if I could finally hear it without static. The civil suit listed 3 defendants: Thomas Monroe, Evelyn Monroe, and Sierra Monroe. Charges: identity theft, fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, conspiracy to defraud a federal employee. A second suit criminal was being prepped separately by the DOD and Justice Department. That one was out of my hands. But this one? This was mine. People think the court is about drama. Speeches. Slamming evidence down like you're in an episode of something. It's not. It's paperwork. Deadlines. Waiting. And I was okay with that. Because, for once, they were the ones forced to answer. The first notice of service was delivered to my father's business address. He ignored it. A federal process server hand-delivered the second while he was unlocking the office door. He looked stunned. But not confused. Sierra's notice was trickier. She'd stopped responding to calls. Changed her number. Went offline. But the court doesn't care if you're emotionally unavailable, they just want confirmation you've been legally told. She got hers at the gate of her grad school campus, right before her new friends. Mom's arrived by certified mail. She didn't respond. But she didn't return it, either. Silence was the new family anthem. Claire checked in with me every couple of days. Holding up? Steady. Media hasn't picked it up yet, but it will. Let them. You sure? I didn't pick this fight, I'm just refusing to lose it. By week 3, their attorney contacted us. A man named Russell Park. Polished voice, polite emails, always using phrases like amicable resolution and without further escalation. Claire shut that down immediately. We don't settle with people who pretend this didn't happen. Park replied with an offer. Low, predictable, insulting. Claire didn't even forward it to me until after she rejected it. Your silence is your strength right now, she said. They want you loud, angry, easier to discredit. I nodded. I'd learned long ago that control wasn't about volume but clarity. The court scheduled a preliminary hearing. Just procedure. Nothing headline-worthy. But that morning, heads turned as I walked into the building in uniform. Not out of respect, out of surprise. They hadn't expected me to show up like that. I sat across from my family. Sierra avoided my eyes. Dad looked thinner. Mom was still wearing pearls as they could protect her. Their lawyer did most of the talking. Claire said little. I said nothing. But when the judge asked me to confirm my identity, I stood. Commander Alexandra Monroe, U.S. Navy, plaintiff. The judge nodded. So did Claire. The hearing ended in under 30 minutes. Outside the courthouse, a reporter asked if I had a comment. I looked into the camera and said, "Sometimes doing the right thing means doing it alone." That was the only quote I gave. I went home, changed out of the uniform, poured a glass of water, opened the fridge. Empty. Didn't matter. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel I owed anyone anything. And that kind of hunger I could live with. I didn't sleep that night not out of fear, just a kind of alertness that doesn't turn off when you're finally being listened to. By morning, the courthouse parking lot was already filling up. Media vans. Satellite dishes. A handful of protesters with signs they didn't fully understand. Some said, "Justice for veterans." Others said, "Stop the smear," which side they were on. I couldn't tell. I walked through the front entrance in uniform. Again. The same bars were on my collar and my boots in Kandahar. The security guard gave me a slight nod. The kind that says, "I see you, even if I can't say anything." Inside, Claire met me near the elevators. "They filed a motion to suppress the ledger," she said, walking fast. "Claimed it was obtained without a proper subpoena. They're bluffing. They're reaching. But the judge might entertain it. Let him." Courtroom 4C looked like every other courtroom. Wood paneling, uncomfortable chairs, and a clock that ticked loud enough to make time feel hostile. I sat on the plaintiff's side. Sierra walked in 5 minutes later. She wasn't wearing pearls. Neither was Mom. Dad looked like he hadn't slept in days. Their attorney, Russell Park, stood to argue the suppression. He said words like prejudicial and improper channels and undue influence by military personnel. He discussed how I may have leveraged government access to collect evidence. Claire stayed silent until the judge asked for her response. She stood. Calm. Controlled. "Your Honor, the evidence was collected through private investigation, authorized by Commander Monroe as the affected party. Every document was lawfully obtained." The judge leaned forward. "And the digital financial ledger?" "Was intercepted as part of an ongoing federal inquiry," Claire replied. "Our copy is courtesy of the IG's office." Park objected. Overruled. The ledger stayed. Sierra shifted in her seat. Just a flicker, but I saw it. Testimony began after lunch. The first witness, a forensic accountant. He walked the court through every transfer, every shadow account, every name that shouldn't have been there. He talked fast, but the weight of the numbers did the job. The second witness was the notary license registrar from Virginia. She confirmed that my mother's license had expired and was not eligible for renewal without formal recertification, which had never been done. Third witness, Agent Nolan. Calm. Direct. She laid out the internal audit trail, the metadata, and the email logs. And then she dropped the detail no one expected. We also found evidence that Sierra Monroe submitted a fabricated job offer using the commander's name and credentials to apply for a clearance, required internship at a DoD contractor. The room shifted. Park stood. Objection. This isn't in the complaint. Judge. It goes to pattern. Overruled. Sierra looked like she might bolt. Claire leaned into me, whispered. They just lost the jury. Then it was my turn. They swore me in. Claire asked the questions. Nothing dramatic. Just clean, direct truth. I spoke clearly. No tears, no raised voice. I answered every question like I was giving a field briefing, facts only. But the tension spoke for itself. When it came time for cross, Park tried. Commander Monroe, would you say you've had a strained relationship with your family in recent years? I'd say it got strained when they started using me to fund theirs. He pushed again. Didn't you voluntarily distance yourself? I deployed. They disappeared. All. Isn't it true that you haven't spoken to your sister for more than 4 years prior to this incident? Correct. And somehow, she still managed to access my pay stub. He turned to the judge. No further questions. I stepped down. Sierra took the stand next. Her attorney coached her well. She used phrases like misunderstanding, emotional pressure, and fear of losing stability. She didn't cry, but her voice cracked enough to seem coached. She didn't deny the ledger. Or the documents. She just softened them. We were scared. My dad's business was failing. I didn't know how to fix it. Alex always seemed untouchable. Like she had a life we couldn't reach. I made a terrible decision. I stared at her, wondering how long she'd rehearsed that. Claire didn't object. Let her talk. After an hour, the judge called for a recess. I stood. Walked out without waiting. Outside, the sun hit my face like a searchlight. I didn't blink. A reporter shouted a question. Do you feel vindicated, Commander Monroe? I didn't answer. Not yet. Inside, the courtroom emptied behind me. But not a single person in that building would walk out unchanged. And I wasn't done sitting with that weight. Not until it crushed something that deserved it. I didn't go home. I walked the courthouse perimeter like I was clearing a perimeter in combat. Every corner, every hedge, every blind spot. Not because I thought someone was coming. Because I needed the stillness to mean something. Because control is sometimes measured in how you stand when the world tries to spin you. When I finally went back inside, they were already seated. Mom in her usual pearls. Dad wearing the same tie he used to wear to my high school awards ceremonies, the ones he left early from. Sierra sat tall, spine straight, lips pressed like a seal. She looked composed. Collected. Maybe even proud. Judge Maddox took the bench without a word. His expression said everything. This wasn't about drama, this was about law. He opened the folder in front of him. Cleared his throat. In review of the case, Monroe versus Monroe et al., including all submitted evidence, sworn testimony, and cross-examination results. The room barely breathed. This court finds sufficient cause to uphold the complaint in full. Sierra blinked. The first real reaction. My mother's hands stiffened around the edge of the table. The court recognizes that fraud was knowingly committed by all three named defendants, with intent to deceive, acquire financial gain, and manipulate the identity of the plaintiff without her consent. He continued, but I stopped listening to the words. I knew them already. Knew the rhythm of justice when it wasn't sugar-coated. Claire tapped my wrist. She whispered, listen to this part. I turned my head back. Therefore, the court orders the following. Sierra Monroe is sentenced to 14 months federal custody, suspended upon completion of 2,000 hours of court-supervised restitution work, including victim financial restoration and full public acknowledgement of the fraud. Evelyn Monroe is fined $75,000 and permanently barred from serving in any legal, financial, or notarial capacity. Thomas Monroe is fined $95,000 and placed under 5-year financial probation with quarterly audits. Sierra's mouth opened just slightly. Not enough for sound, just enough to register the weight of real consequence. The judge continued. Commander Monroe, your request for legal damages is granted in full. Your identity and service record will be formally restored. Civil record sealed, military file updated. Claire stood. Thank you, Your Honor. The judge added, and let the record show this court recognizes the extraordinary breach of familial trust endured by the plaintiff. I didn't move. Not even a blink. Not yet. Court adjourned. The gavel hit like a soft bomb. We stood to leave. Sierra stayed sitting. Her eyes found mine. She looked like she wanted to say something. Maybe sorry, maybe nothing. But I didn't stop walking. Outside, the reporters swarmed again. Flashes, mix, shouts. I didn't break stride. Claire caught up with me. You okay? I'm not sure okay means what it used to. She handed me a sealed envelope. That's your copy. Clean and final. I took it. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like fresh air. Across the street, a woman watched me. Probably early 30s. Holding a kid's hand. She gave me a nod, the kind you give someone who walked through a fire and didn't explain it. I nodded back. That meant more than any verdict. In the distance, I saw Sierra walk out a side exit. Alone. No mom. No dad, no entourage, just her. She still walked tall. But that pride she'd wrapped herself in. It sagged at the edges now. It knew what it had cost. I kept walking. Not because I didn't care. Because I finally knew the difference between being hurt and being done. I didn't go home, I drove until the courthouse felt like a memory someone else had to carry. Ended up near Quantico. No real plan. Just instinct. There was a base run training drill nearby. Fresh recruits doing formation runs like they thought this life was about push-ups and sweat, not paperwork and silence. I parked in the visitor lot and sat there. Engine off. Hands still on the wheel. Like letting go would make it real. The knock on the window came 10 minutes later. A young lieutenant. He looked 12. Commander Monroe. I nodded. You've been requested at headquarters. Rear Admiral Polk. He said you'd know why. I followed him without a word. Inside, everything smelled like recycled air and furniture polish. The hallway was quiet. I passed 3 flag cases, 2 promotion plaques, and 1 photo of a man I once briefed in Baghdad. The Admiral waited inside a modest office. Oak desk, thin blinds, no pretense. He stood when I entered. Commander, he said. Please, sit. I sat. He slid a folder across the desk. Your name came up last week during internal reviews. Multiple departments flagged your situation as exemplary. Not just for your military service, but for what followed. I didn't say anything. He opened the folder. Inside was a single page. You've been approved for formal recognition. Navy Commendation Medal. Cited for integrity in defense of federal systems under personal risk. And for maintaining operational conduct during a civilian legal investigation. Feels ironic, I said. He allowed the corner of his mouth to twitch. Integrity doesn't always look clean. I stared at the page. You don't have to accept, he added. That part I believed. I nodded once. Fine, I'll take it. He smiled. It'll be issued at the end of month. Quietly. Unless you request otherwise. Quiet's fine. He stood again. Thank you for not burning it all down. I looked him dead in the eye. Some of it needed to burn. He didn't argue. The same young lieutenant handed me a small velvet box on the way out. It's not ceremony yet, ma'am. But he said you might want to see it. I opened it. Simple. No glamour. No shine, just green and white ribbon. A brass star. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like breath. Outside, I stood in the parking lot holding the box. One of the recruits passed by, stopped, and looked at me like I was something from a textbook. Did you really get that for turning in your own family? He asked. I blinked once. Number I got it for doing what they wouldn't. He nodded. Kept jogging. I put the box in the glove compartment, drove off without music. No calls, no texts. Just the hum of tires and the vague sense I wasn't being followed anymore. I passed the old neighborhood once. Didn't slow down. Didn't need to. By the time I got back to my place, the sun had already slid behind the trees. Claire had left a package at my door. Inside, case files, media clippings, and a note. Here's what they'll remember. You choose what to forget. I set it on the kitchen counter. Didn't open it. In the quiet, I opened the fridge again. Still, empty. Fine. I poured a glass of water. Saturday, at the table. Stared at nothing for a long time. The metal box sat nearby. I didn't open it again. I didn't need to. Because it wasn't about the ribbon or the star. It was about the fact that I was still standing, and this time, nobody got to rewrite what that meant. I turned off the kitchen light not because I was done, but because I finally didn't need it to feel awake. The quiet didn't press on me anymore. It just existed. Not heavy, not hostile. Just there. In the dark, I sat at the table with my hands flat on the surface. No papers, no folders, no phone. Nothing to check, nothing to track. It took months to get here. A voicemail buzzed sometime around midnight. Claire. Her voice was low, professional, but softer than usual. Thought you should know, Department of the Navy published the correction. Your service record is clean, you're reinstated in full. No flags, no annotations. It's like it never happened. Except it did. She paused. I hope that gives you peace. Talk soon. I didn't call back. I didn't need to. That message wasn't for action, it was closure. I lay down on the couch. Didn't fall asleep, just rested. The next morning, I went running. First time in a while. No music. No route. Just street after street of houses that didn't know my name. I liked it that way. Stopped by the river. Watched the current for too long. When I turned to go back, a woman and her kid were throwing rocks into the water. The kid asked if I was in the military. Still am, I said. The woman smiled. Thank you for your service. I nodded. Kept walking. The sun had taken over the whole block by the time I got home. It's not warm, just clear. Inside, the box with the medals still sat untouched. I left it that way. Later that day, I got an email from the university Sierra used to attend. A formal letter stating her degree had been revoked due to academic fraud. No emotion came with it. Just a quiet breath. A few days after that, a card arrived. Handwritten. No return address. You didn't deserve what we did. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know I see it now. S. I didn't throw it away. I didn't respond. But I placed it in the drawer under the sink. Not because it mattered, because I didn't want to pretend it hadn't happened. I started cooking again. First, it was just toast and eggs. Then rice, then chili, then real food. I stopped ordering takeout. I stopped skipping dinner. One night, I made a full meal. Saturday down. Ate it slowly. No distractions. And somewhere in the middle of it, I laughed. Not loud, not long. But enough. Because sometimes you don't need revenge. You just need someone to stop pretending your silence was consent. Weeks passed. Nothing big happened. No headlines, no interviews, no sudden calls from family. Just life is finally allowed to be boring. I cleaned the apartment. I bought a lamp. I fixed the squeaky drawer I'd been ignoring for a year. I even called an old friend from boot camp. We talked for 2 hours about nothing important. And it felt like breathing. The day I finally opened the metal box again, I did it with coffee in my hand and no audience. I held it in my palm. It didn't weigh anything, but it reminded me that I did. That I counted. That even when people closest to you pretend you're expendable, you're still there. Still solid. Still enough. I didn't get revenge. I didn't need it. I got clarity. And that's louder than rage. I stepped outside, locked the door behind me. No hesitation. No mental inventory of what could go wrong. Downstairs, the mailman waved. Morning, Commander. Morning. He smiled. Beautiful day. Yeah, I said. It is. And this time, I meant it. Some people think stories like this are about revenge. But I know better. This wasn't about payback. It was about naming what hurt and refusing to stay quiet about it. About standing up, not louder, just longer. If you've ever been erased, used, or made to feel like your silence was easier to love than your truth, then you know, this isn't just my story. It's the kind people don't talk about because it's close. Because it's family. Because it's not supposed to happen like this. But it does. And maybe that's why revenge stories hit harder when they're messy or something that could have happened to you. If this one stays with you, subscribe. We tell real stories here. The kind that starts at the dinner table and ends in courtrooms. The kind of family drama no one admits but everyone feels. Leave a comment if you've lived something close. You're not the only one, and you're not invisible.